If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Sharing it with your friends and family helps spread knowledge, and when we help others grow, we grow too. Thank you so much for listening. Let's dive into the podcast. The discovery on Vintém Hill. The sun was setting over Vintém Hill on August 20th, 1966, when three boys decided to fly their kites on the grassy slope. They ran up the hill, laughing and chasing the wind. But their joy stopped cold when they saw something that would haunt them forever. Two men lay side by side on the ground. They were dressed in perfect dark suits, as if going to an important meeting. Their white shirts were crisp and clean. Their shoes were polished. Everything looked normal, except for one terrifying detail. Both men wore strange masks over their eyes. The masks were made of lead, heavy and thick. Someone had crafted them by hand with great care. The metal pieces covered their eyes completely, like blindfolds made of stone. The boys ran home screaming. Soon, police cars filled the quiet hillside. Officers stood around the bodies, scratching their heads. Nothing made sense. There were no wounds, no blood, no signs of a fight. The two men looked peaceful, as if they had simply laid down to rest. Their names were Manuel Pereira de Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana. Both worked as electronics repairmen in the city below. They were ordinary men with ordinary lives. But this was no ordinary death. Near the bodies, police found waterproof coats folded neatly. A small amount of money sat nearby, untouched. These items only deepened the mystery. Why bring raincoats on a clear day? Why leave money behind if this was a robbery? The scene felt staged, like actors had prepared for a secret play. Every detail seemed planned. The matching suits, the identical masks, the way they lay perfectly still, hands at their sides. Word spread quickly through Brazil. Newspapers ran wild headlines. The lead mask mystery became the story everyone whispered about. Radio shows debated theories. People gathered in cafes to share their thoughts. Some believed the men were part of a strange ritual. Others thought they had witnessed something they shouldn't have seen. A few whispered about government experiments gone wrong. But the police found no answers. No witnesses came forward. No evidence pointed to a killer. The lead masks became Brazil's most puzzling question. What drove two normal men to climb a hill wearing metal blindfolds? Who made those masks and why? What secret were they hiding behind that cold lead? The boys who found them grew up, but they never forgot that evening on Vintém Hill. The image of those two figures, dressed for business but wearing masks of mystery, remained burned in their minds. Even today, more than 50 years later, nobody knows what really happened on that hillside. The truth died with Manuel and Miguel, taking their secret to the grave. The cryptic note and clues at the scene. The police thought they understood what happened on that hill. Two men, two strange masks, two bodies that told no clear story. But then came the note, folded tight in one man's pocket. The paper changed everything. The words were simple, but made no sense. Take capsules at a certain time. Protect the metals. Wait for the signal. Keep the masks on. It read like instructions for something no one could name. Detective Silva held the paper up to the light. The handwriting was calm and neat, not the scrawl of someone scared or rushed. This was planned. Around the bodies, more strange things waited. Two water bottles sat nearby, caps twisted off, but barely touched. Clean white towels lay folded beside them. Everything placed with care, like pieces in a puzzle that had no picture to follow. The men's clothes told another story. Fresh shirts, clean pants, new shoes that had barely touched dirt. They had dressed for something important. But what kind of event required lead masks and pills? The local newspaper called it a ritual. The police called it suspicious. Families called it impossible. Why would two ordinary men climb a hill to die? Miguel's wife shook her head when they asked. Her husband fixed radios and televisions. He was not the type for secret meetings or strange ceremonies. But there he was, dressed in his best clothes, wearing a mask that made no sense. The other man, Manuel, had been Miguel's friend for years. They worked together, ate lunch together, talked about normal things like work and weather and family. Nothing in their lives explained the note. Investigators spread the evidence across tables and tried to find meaning. The capsules mentioned in the note were never found. What signal were they waiting for? Who was supposed to send it? The masks themselves offered no answers. Made from thick lead sheets, cut by hand, held on with simple string. Someone had spent time making them. Someone had planned this moment. But the biggest question remained written on that folded paper, the final line that made everyone stop and stare. After the effect, protect metals, wait for signal, stay masked. After what effect? What metals needed protection? What signal from where? The note promised answers, but delivered only deeper questions that would haunt investigators for decades to come. Dead ends. The unsolved autopsy and lack of cause. The doctors began their work with careful hands and sharp minds. They knew the world was watching. Two men had died on a hilltop wearing strange lead masks, leaving behind a note that made no sense. Surely the bodies would tell their story, but the bodies stayed silent. The first examination brought confusion. No wounds, no broken bones, no signs of a struggle. The men looked as if they had simply laid down and never woken up. Their skin showed no marks from poison or violence. It was as if death had touched them gently, leaving no trace of how or why. Time had not been kind to the remains. Days under the hot Brazilian sun had changed the bodies too much. The doctors tried every test they knew. They searched for chemicals that might have stopped their hearts. They looked for drugs that could have put them to sleep forever. But decomposition had erased the evidence like rain washing away footprints. The cryptic note became even stranger now. 1630, be at the specified location. 1830, ingest capsules. After effect protect metals await signal mask. What capsules? The doctors found nothing. No pills in their stomachs, no powder on their lips, no liquid in their blood that should not be there. Police knocked on doors across the city. They asked questions until their voices grew hoarse. Had anyone seen the men that day? Did anyone know what they were planning? The answers came back empty. Friends said the men seemed normal. Shopkeepers remembered nothing unusual. Even their families could not explain the lead masks or the hilltop meeting. Days turned to weeks. The case file grew thick with reports that led nowhere. Every theory crumbled under questioning. Murder seemed unlikely with no wounds or suspects. Suicide made little sense with no clear motive. Accident felt wrong with such careful planning. The newspapers filled with wild stories. Some whispered about secret societies and ancient rituals. Others spoke of visitors from distant stars. The lead masks became symbols of contact with beings from other worlds. But stories are just stories without proof. The investigation stalled like a car with no fuel. Detectives stared at evidence that told them nothing. Medical experts shrugged at test results that revealed no secrets. The case joined the ranks of mysteries that refused to be solved. Two men died on a hill. They left behind questions that echo still today. Sometimes the most puzzling mysteries are the ones where all the clues point to nothing at all. The expanding web, linked events, and secret experiments. The police thought they had found a simple case of suicide or accident. But as days passed, whispers began to surface from the shadows of Niterói. People started talking about strange meetings, secret gatherings, and those lead masks were not the first ones ever made. A shopkeeper remembered selling similar masks months before, always to the same type of customer. Men who spoke in hushed tones about experiments and spiritual journeys. They paid in cash and never gave their real names. Detective Silva found himself following a trail that grew colder and stranger with each step. The two dead men had friends. These friends met in back rooms of old buildings. They called themselves scientific spiritualists, believing they could bridge the gap between life and death through careful study. Manuel and Miguel were not beginners at this game. Neighbors recalled seeing them leave their homes late at night, carrying small bags and equipment. They would return before dawn, looking exhausted but excited. They spoke of progress, of breakthroughs that would change everything. The investigation team discovered notebooks hidden in Miguel's apartment, pages filled with dates, times, and strange symbols. Instructions for preparing the mind and body. Lists of materials needed for what they called transcendence experiments. Other names appeared in these notes. Men who had tried similar tests in different cities across Brazil. Some had simply disappeared. Others were found in circumstances that made local police scratch their heads and close cases quickly. Detective Silva contacted police departments in Sao Paulo and Belo Horizonte. Both cities had reports of unexplained deaths involving amateur spiritualists. In each case, the victims wore unusual items: lead masks, copper wires, strange chemicals nearby. The deeper Silva dug, the more resistance he met. Spiritualist groups claimed they knew nothing about scientific experiments, but their stories kept changing. Their leaders avoided questions and canceled meetings when police arrived. Former group members, speaking only in secret, described rituals designed to separate the soul from the body. They talked about achieving contact with forces beyond human understanding. The lead masks were not random items. They were tools carefully crafted to protect the mind during dangerous journeys into the unknown. What had Manuel and Miguel been trying to achieve on that hilltop? Were they following instructions from someone else? Or had they pushed too far into territory where human beings were never meant to go? The case that began with two bodies had become something much larger. A web of secret societies, failed experiments, and questions that seemed to multiply with every answer. Theories and the case that would not die. The official investigation started with such promise. Police officers, scientists, journalists, and even military experts arrived at Vintém Hill. Each group brought their own tools and methods. Each one believed they would solve this strange puzzle. But something odd happened. The more they looked, the more confused everyone became. The first theory seemed simple enough. Maybe the two men had taken dangerous drugs by accident. Perhaps they thought the strange substances would give them special powers. Instead, the chemicals killed them. This explanation felt neat and clean to some investigators. Others disagreed completely. They pointed to the lead masks and the careful way the bodies were arranged. This looked like a planned ritual, they said. Maybe the men believed they needed protection from supernatural forces. Maybe they chose to die, thinking the masks would shield their souls. But darker theory began to whisper through the halls of government buildings. What if secret experiments were happening in Brazil? What if these two men had volunteered for something they didn't understand? The timing felt suspicious. The location seemed too remote to be random. The murder theory gained followers when people noticed how organized everything appeared. Someone had planned this scene very carefully. A secret group might have killed the men and staged the whole thing to look like suicide or accident. Then something truly strange happened. Official files started disappearing. Police reports vanished from filing cabinets. Witness statements went missing. The few documents that remained had pages torn out or sections blacked out with heavy ink. People began asking uncomfortable questions. Why would the government hide information about two dead electricians? What secrets were worth covering up? The missing files created more mystery than any theory could explain. Years passed, but the case refused to die. New witnesses appeared with fresh stories. One person claimed to have seen strange lights over Vintém Hill that night. Another remembered hearing unusual radio signals in the area. Each new voice added another layer to the mystery. The story grew beyond simple death investigation. People connected it to tales of visitors from other worlds. Others linked it to secret government projects. Some whispered about occult societies practicing dangerous magic in remote locations. Decades have read by since that August day in 1966. The lead masks case remains open, unsolved, and as puzzling as ever. Every theory that seemed to explain the deaths eventually crumbled under closer examination. Every investigation ended with more questions than answers. The two men on Vintém Hill had become symbols of something larger. They represented the mysteries that science cannot explain and the secrets that governments will not share. Their story proves that some puzzles are meant to endure, growing stranger and more compelling with each passing year.